Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Lincoln Riley, the USC Trojans, they're straight up buzzing on the recruiting trail. In fact, from what I've seen, I don't know if there's a program that has more momentum surrounding them in this 2026 cycle than USC. And now it starts with what they've been doing in the state of California and prioritizing that top talent, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. But I think I want to start at the quarterback position. Jonas Williams. A lot of predictions, a lot of crystal balls coming in for Jonas Williams to flip his commitment from Oregon to USC. Now, the USC fans who've been rocking with the boys the last couple of weeks, we are pretty familiar with Jonas Williams. When he was on campus for USC in early February, I think that made a lot of USC fans who follow the recruiting trail pretty closely kind of perk their ears up because it was a little bit of a divergence of how we're used to seeing Lincoln Riley operate on the recruiting trail when it comes to quarterbacks. Normally, Lincoln Riley kind of picks his guy and really just goes after that one quarterback. When Jonas Williams popped up on campus, it kind of signified to us that, Lincoln Riley really likes this kid. And I wouldn't be surprised if Lincoln Riley kind of pushes his chips in the middle for Jonas Williams. It's kind of what we've seen play out over the last couple of weeks. Now, we're going to talk about what this means for Ryder Lyons a little bit later, but I want to focus on Jonas Williams first. And I'll keep it short because we've talked about Jonas Williams when he was on campus earlier this month. The thing I love is it's getting back to the type of quarterbacks that USC and Lincoln Riley have had a lot of success with. And that is, quarterbacks that have very, very good arm talent, of which Jonas Williams certainly does, but difference makers at the quarterback spot. Guys that not only can hurt you with their legs running the football, but guys that I think more importantly can get outside the pocket, can throw off platform, can be difference makers and playmakers at the quarterback position. Think back to Caleb Williams and the amount of times he just kind of pulled a rabbit out of the hat and made plays. That's something that all quarterbacks that have had success under Lincoln Riley have done really well. And in 2024, that was in it kind of just missing with the guy like Miller Moss. You land a guy like Jonas Williams, Hassan Longstreet in the 2025 class. We're getting back to these quarterbacks that Lincoln Riley, I think, is most comfortable working with. And that's really important. When you give quarterbacks that Lincoln Riley is comfortable working with, normally good things happen. That's what I love most about a guy like Jonas Williams. And kind of just going over my notes of checking out his film, we talked about the athlete, twitchy release. He's a guy that does not have a lot going on in terms of releasing the football, which I normally like when you're talking about high school kids because there's a little bit less. And I ain't no quarterbacks coach, but you see with some of these quarterbacks that have really, really big and winding releases, things go wrong from a mechanic standpoint. Jonas Williams, twitchy, very simple, gets the ball out on time, and then is an athlete. And those are the things you want to see checked at the quarterback position coming out of high school. Now, Jonas Williams, I'm a fan of. I want to talk a little bit about Ryder Lyons as well. And then I want to talk about how this could kind of send a ripple effect in terms of the USC pass catchers. We talk about this a lot on the recruiting trail when you are recruiting top-notch wide receivers, some of the biggest names across the country. You want to make sure you have your quarterback locked in because it gets a heck of a lot easier to recruit wide receivers when they know they're going to have good quarterback play. And you stack Hassan Longstreet and Jonas Williams, you can start selling good quarterback play under Lincoln Riley over the next couple of years. Now, before we get into it, as always, to the USC fans, would love to hear what are the vibes in terms of how we're feeling about USC on the recruiting trail. More importantly, how we're feeling about Jonas Williams, because I do know there are some USC fans that are like, well, Jonas Williams coming to USC, what does that mean for Ryder Lyons? Because we like Ryder Lyons a lot as well. Would love to hear from you guys. Appreciate you guys rocking with. It's going to be a really fun next couple of weeks talking this program on the recruiting trail. Without further ado, let's get into this one. Now, we talked about Jonas Williams. I think the question now is, what does that mean for Ryder Lyons? I think there are two things that I'll note here. Number one, I don't think this is a massive impact in terms of Ryder Lyons because Ryder Lyons essentially is going to be a 2027 guy going on his mission trip after he graduates high school. And so I don't know if it's a huge impact. I think USC is kind of recruiting him as a 2027 quarterback. Obviously, his brother plays for USC. I still consider USC a top contender for Ryder Lyons. Now, what I will say and what I appreciate Lincoln Riley doing here is, look, we we can't afford to have a similar situation that happened with Julian Lewis or a guy like Dylan Raiola last year, where, sometimes when Lincoln Riley pushes his chips in for his guy and you don't get your guy, you're left kind of holding an empty bag in terms of no quarterbacks committing because you only recruited one. And if they don't come to USC, you don't have a quarterback. Now, you kind of got lucky with the Hassan Longstreet flip late in that process. You can't kind of bet on flipping a 5-star quarterback with 3 weeks till signing day year after year. And so if Ryder Lyons was not ready to, maybe come to USC at some point in the summer, I think it makes sense for Lincoln Riley to say, well, we got a couple other quarterbacks that want to come to USC. Go make sure you lock in one of those. And it doesn't mean you stop recruiting Ryder Lyons, but go make sure you have a quarterback so you can kind of springboard yourself going into the summer, specifically recruiting wide receivers. Look, I like Jonas Williams and Ryder Lyons a lot. I think if you can finish up and kind of close, if you will, on Jonas Williams, it puts you in a good spot to start recruiting some really, really good wide receivers, of which I want to talk about. I think the most intriguing name here is Ethan Booby Feaster, who reclassified, was a 2027 guy, reclassifies to 2026, a lower recruiting ranking right now because the reclassification, was a bona fide 5-star in the 2027 cycle. I think we're seeing a pivot in terms of how Lincoln Riley is recruiting wide receivers. Look at the past couple of wide receivers that didn't really work out for USC, right? Deuce Robinson, Zachariah Branch. They were both coming out of high school, just freak show athletes, right? Deuce Robinson because of the size-speed combination, Zachariah Branch because of the speed and quicks. But both of them weren't necessarily the most polished wide receivers. And you kind of got enamored with the track times or how tall Deuce Robinson was, and maybe forgot to kind of scout the football player as well. And this is not me getting up here and saying I don't want to bet on athletic traits. Like that is, in my opinion, still the way to go when you're recruiting high schoolers. Go bet on the really good athletes. You can make them good football players. But at the wide receiver position, who have been the wide receivers that have had the most success with USC over the last couple of years? I think Mekhi Lemon comes to my mind first. You look at Mekhi Lemon coming out of high school, he was a very, very sought-after prospect, but it was not because he was the biggest wide receiver, and it certainly was not because he was the fastest wide receiver, although he's pretty damn fast. It was because of how good of a wide receiver he was. He might have not been the freaky speedster that Zachariah Branch was. He certainly was not the guy that was 6'6" like Deuce Robinson was, but he's a wide receiver that understood tempo, that understood change of direction, that understand how to separate in man coverage and run clean routes. And we are seeing that translate at the next level for him at USC. He's probably been the best wide receiver of that class. Another guy that it kind of reminds me of is Jordan Addison, who had a lot of, and I know USC didn't recruit him out of high school, but another similar kind of wide receiver where it's not the physical traits that are dripping off the kid, but it's just he's a really good wide receiver coming out. And these wide receivers that USC seems to be going after, like an Ethan Feaster, kind of fit under that mold where you look at Ethan Booby Feaster and he's a very good athlete. This is not me getting up here and saying he ain't a good athlete, because these guys are also really good athletes. But what they also are guys that have shown they know how to play the wide receiver position so many different ways that a guy like Ethan Feaster can win. Yards after the catch is probably the most impressive. He is kind of just like superhuman in terms of just not getting brought down. He's got the contact balance of a 220-pound running back. Really good short area quicks, more than enough long speed to kind of hit the home run. That's what stands out to me first, is I'm good at yards after the catch. I can create separation. I can win vertically. He's a multi-dimensional wide receiver. Another guy that I would love to see USC turn it up for is Caden Dixon-White at Mater Dei. Very similar conversation. Now, again, Caden Dixon-White, he ain't not an athlete. And you look at him, he's 6'3", 185. I believe a 39-inch vertical. We're betting on those traits every day of the week. But then you turn on the film and say a lot of different ways that he's winning as a pass catcher. Wins at the catch point in terms of contested catch situations, can separate in those short intermediate routes. He's good after the catch. Another one of those more polished wide receivers where, again, you go back to a guy like Deuce Robinson or a guy like Zachariah Branch. Deuce Robinson, he was a 5-star prospect, and I don't blame him for being a 5-star prospect, and I certainly don't blame USC for going after him, but you weren't really sure what position he's going to play. Is he going to play tight end? Is he going to be wide receiver? He's just kind of more of a I'm going to catch it over guys. And it was a very good athlete for the size, but the polish that wasn't necessarily there. And then you look at Zachariah Branch, who was very good with the ball in his hands and very good at running in a straight line vertically down the field. But as we saw during the first 2 years for Zachariah at USC, the route running never really came along, was not a very good natural pass catcher of the football. We're starting to see USC prioritize these pass catchers that are not only very good athletes, right? Where we still want to bet on some athletes, but are also guys that shown they can play at a high level. Last guy I'll talk about, Vance Bafford. And I would love, I ain't trying to pick sides between Georgia and USC, but I'd love to see USC get their lick back here. I mean, how many times did Georgia, I believe it was twice in the 2025 class, he had Georgia kids committed to USC and Georgia kind of comes in late, especially with a guy like Isaiah Gibson. Would love to see USC get their lick back, right? He's committed to Georgia right now, but he's a Cali kid. And again, if you lock down a guy like Jonas Williams and now you're selling to Vance Spafford, hey, you're going to have good quarterback play between Hassan Longstreet and Jonas Williams, potentially Ryder Lyons as well versus Georgia. Question marks about the quarterback play. And Vance Spafford, one, he's a burner. He's one of the fastest players in this class, but he has the production to back it up. You're talking about 83 catches for over 1,500 yards during his sophomore year of high school. I believe broke the school record there his sophomore year. So you're talking about a guy that not only can burn, but he's also a really, really good pass catcher too, and has shown that on Friday nights in the fall. A little bit of a shift in terms, and this might, and I don't have any inside information, but this might go back to USC hiring a brand new front office that's going to run things a little bit differently on the recruiting trail. And I'm a fan, and I think it's going to be really fun over the next couple of weeks and months to see what USC does. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.